Yes.
Do you stream on Discord, please? Stream on Discord, please.
Discord.
Does he sound like a robot to anybody else?
No. There is a little bit of like a hum in the background, but it's not bad. I can hear you clearly.
Low-key demonic sounding. That is
Yeah.
better. You don't sound like a demon anymore. You know me, I like to criticize. That's what I'm here for.
Damn.
B codec. Add. Hello, hello. No, still not working. Alright, bear with me here, guys. Let me try to fix this real quick. I don't know why this is not working right now.
You're not being paid for this session.
I mean, the
Taking it from your
thing
wage.
is picking up. I don't understand. Micro edit. Fix the mic. Oh, you can hear it now? Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so are you sure you can hear me? Because it's not popping up on my thing. Can you confirm that you can hear me? Just confirm that for me, please. Is there anybody here on Twitch? Can you just confirm for me
Hello.
real quick? No, I
I'm
mean,
not. And Jamie, please quit talking. You're hurting everybody's ears.
Okay.
I guess I could just pull it up real quick on my thing, just to see if my, instead of waiting for her to do it, let's see. So twitch.tv, dynamic fix. Testing, testing. Hello, hello. Testing, testing. Okay. All right. So we're gonna kind of start over a little bit. I apologize. Nobody could hear me before. This is lesson 7, Practical HTML, CSS, JavaScript example. I kind of skipped through a lot of the stuff that I said before, but basically today we're going to be working on putting everything together. So this is more of a recap than a lesson, but we will be covering some new things too that I will explain along the way. And I'll go ahead and repeat what I said before. For my wife and for my daughter who are watching this, this is homework due on next Thursday. For everybody else who's catching on, this is something that I really strongly recommend you do. It should not take much of your time. At least, I mean, assuming you're doing a good job at somewhat keeping up, this is going to be very, very basic. And if you try to reproduce what I'm gonna do on stream today, right now, it's a pretty good like practice example just to make sure that you're able to kind of understand how all the three things HTML, CSS, and JavaScript kind of tie together. So anyway, it's enough talking, and I had to say all of that twice. So let's go ahead and kind of jump into it right now. So this is the blank page. This is like a standard screen size, right? So all we're gonna do, super basic, okay? We're going to have a blue box on the top left, okay? And we're going to have, let me put that in a little later just so it's a little easier for me. And we're going to have a red box on the bottom right, okay? And then what we're gonna do, this is just like me kind of designing necessarily what we're going to be doing. So a red box. Wow, my Photoshop is really laggy today for some reason. And then we'll just put like a black box or something. Maybe we'll do a circle, whatever, in the middle of those two boxes. Well, of just one of the boxes. And what we'll do is using JavaScript and CSS. I mean, we're going to use JavaScript and CSS to style these things. But what we're going to do is we're going to make it so when you click on the red box, the black box animates over to where the red box is. The red circle animates over to where the red box is. And if you click on the blue box, it goes to the other one. But then also what we'll do is we'll try to make it so like if you're clicking mid transition, it'll like stop whatever it's doing and go back. But hopefully that makes sense. It'll make more sense once you see it because we're about to do it. It's very basic, very straightforward. So here we go. We're gonna start with just making a new project on NetBeans. If you're using a different IDE, however it is you set up new projects, and we'll just do a simple HTML JavaScript application. And we're gonna call it box to box. You guys can call it whatever you want, and that's what I'm gonna call it. And that's it. Finish. Nothing specific. So NetBeans gives you, you know, your default thing. I like to get rid of the comments because I don't like NetBeans comments in there. I'm gonna make the title box to box. And normally when I work on things like this, I like to just right away go ahead and open up where I'm gonna be testing it. So I'm gonna test it on Chrome. So I'll open up a Chrome window. I'll save this file. I'll leave it as index.html. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and open the file here on Chrome. So open, there's no open file here. I forget about that. So let me just open the file like this. Let me go to my desktop, web development school, box to box, and it's gonna be here. So go ahead and open that there. Okay, to do right content, I'm gonna put this on the left, and I'm gonna put, I'm sorry, on the right, on the other left, and put NetBeans on the left, browser on the right, and here's how we're gonna do this. So it's gonna be very basic. Again, we're gonna do simple CSS. So first, I'm gonna just make a div to contain the whole page, just for the sake of, I'm gonna actually make it a number 2 instead of the word 2, box to box. There we go. So I'll give an ID with the name of box to box, so that way I have a reference to the whole container. Technically, I could just use body because, you know, I'm not doing anything else here. But normally, like if you're designing a component for something, right, for a page, there's other things on the page, and you just want to enclose just what you're creating. So for the sake of that practice, I'll go ahead and create a div with the ID of box to box. Now I'm going to make the boxes that are going to go, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do div class box, and that's just an empty div. And then I'll make another div here, div class box. That's an empty div. Now one box is going to be red, one box is going to be blue, and then we have a ball. Now I'm not going to actually put the ball inside of the box because we're going to be animating it over everything. So the ball, I'm just going to make it a div ID ball. Okay, and that'll be an empty div as well. So I've created the elements that we're going to use for this animation here that we're going to do. So we have box 1, box 2, and the ball, right? And there's nothing here. So if I refresh this, then obviously there's not going to be anything here. So now the first step is CSS. Now, if you want to very quickly, before having to create a new file and all that, I like to just put everything in a style tag first, and then eventually I'll go ahead and move it over. Now we already went over this in a different lesson, so you guys already know how to do that. So I'm not going to talk about how to do it because I'm trying to keep this under the hour. If you're doing this, so if you are delivering this as homework, the JavaScript needs to be in a separate file, and you should know how to do that. The CSS and the JavaScript. But for now, so the CSS here, we're going to go ahead and first thing, we're going to style both boxes, right? So just so I can see them visually, I'm going to go ahead and say class box, and I'm going to give them, I'm going to make them roughly around the same size I made them on Photoshop. It might not be exact, but so the size I made here, if I just go look at my info grid, and again, don't worry about the Photoshop stuff because I'm not expecting anybody here to like actually use Photoshop for anything. But I'm going to make it 162 by 162. So width 162, height 162, and I'm going to say background color red. So we should have 2 red boxes. They're kind of on top of each other, and you can see that they're padded. Now, I don't want any padding on my body HTML. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to say padding 0, whoops, padding 0, margin 0. I do want no padding or anything on my divs as well, so just in case, shouldn't be any by default, but just in case there is in a browser. So now everything is on the top left. Now I want my red box to be in the top left and my blue box to be in the top right? They're both red now, obviously, but so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the styles for the 2 boxes. So box red, this is the only one that needs the background color red, so I'm going to move the background color here. Actually, this is just dot red. Sorry about that. And the other one's going to be blue, box blue, and we're going to go ahead and put the blue box there. Okay, and now this one's technically already on the top left, right? So I don't really have to do anything to the red box. And then the blue box, I'm gonna say position absolute, right 0, bottom 0. So what that means is it'll tie it to 0 pixels from the right and 0 pixels from the bottom. So now when I refresh, there they are. So we got our boxes in place. Now we need our ball. So yeah, it's ID ball. So remember we use hashtag ball instead of dot ball. Dots for class, hashtag is for ID. And this is just a normal div, right? But we're gonna say we're gonna make the size about half of the other boxes, so about like 80 pixels, right? It's 2 pixels smaller than the other boxes. So width 80, height 80, background color black, and it should just put it right there. Now again, I want this to be inside of the red box, so I'm gonna say position absolute. Now I'm gonna say top. Now we can kind of measure it a little bit, right? We know that this is 162, which is half of that. So off the top is going to be about 81 pixels, and then off of the left is going to be about 81 pixels. That's where we want this box to be. Oh, that was actually wrong. It's half of that, so it's going to be about 40.5 pixels. 40.5 pixels here. And now it should kind of center it. There we go. So now we're centering that red square. Now how do you make this a ball? Well, rounded corner. I actually don't remember off the top of my head. So rounded corner CSS. I think it's just radius. Yeah, border radius. And then you just give it a property. So we're going to give this a border radius. I'm just going to say 10 pixels for now. Okay, and now I will just using our development tools, I'm just going to adjust the border radius to what it actually needs to be, so it can look more like a circle, and that would be perfectly about 40. So 40 pixels, and it's a circle. So 40 pixel radius, and we have a black circle. So now we've officially, very quickly, laid out this design over here, right? Give or take. Now I could make the ball the same size and the box the same size, but you know that's irrelevant, right? That's not important. Now because I did the blue blocks on right 0, bottom 0, it doesn't matter what the size of this is, right? It's going to always keep that blue box on the bottom right, because that's just how it works. So if it was like the same size, then technically it's just on the right side instead of the bottom right, right? But that's fine, and that's what we want. So let me go ahead and put this back where it goes, right? And now that's where we get to the fun part now. So first things first, we want to animate the red. Before we even touch JavaScript, we're going to work on the CSS part, right? Which is the animation value, so that when you move this, it actually goes ahead and animates. Now we did do this. All right, is there a dog in here? Shh! Give me 1 second. Let me kick this dog out of the office. Get out of here. Come on. Go. Go, 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 go. Alina, go. Go, 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 go. I guess my wife is home. Sorry about that. Let's move on. Okay, so we did do this on the first example, and if you guys remember, it's just like the transition property, which again, I don't remember exactly how to write it off the top of my head. So I'm gonna go look at the example. So like, as you like work on more and more things, you always have something like, oh, I've done this before. And if you like have organized your projects pretty well, it should be really easy for you to go and find whatever you're looking for. So I remember I did this on this notepad.js. I did a transition effect, and that was on the CSS file. And all it really is just these two functions right here. The transition property and how long the transition is going to be, and then the timing function. Linear is default, so like we're not going to mess with that at all. If you, when you're messing around with this, if you want to play with transition, you know what? I might you know, I'll actually go ahead and show you some different transition timings just so you can kind of see what it is, because it's pretty cool to know, right? So we'll because this is going to be a short one, I'll go over that and we'll go look at what that is. But anyway, so back to our file here. Now I'm going to go ahead and create the transition. Now the ball is what we're animating. So in the ball, we're going to go ahead and include these two transition functions. Now we're not changing the background color. We're not animating the background color. We're animating the top and the left. So the way you do it, I believe, is top 3S and left 3S. So, and we're going to test it right now. So we set a transition for the top property to be a 3 second animation, and for the left property for it to be a 3 second animation. And right now it's using the default transition timing function. And I'll show you guys the difference in a second. But so how do we test this? You can just literally open up your development tools, and what the transition means, it means that when that CSS property changes, instead of it just changing, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is just remove that transition effect from the web page. I got to refresh it just a second. Okay, let me refresh it first, and then now it's there, right? So I'm going to actually go ahead and remove this transition. I wonder if that works. I guess we're about to find out. So then if I change this to like 800, right? Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. If I change the value of the top to like 800 pixels, it'll just go down 800. It was 80, but if I make it 800, notice it just immediately changes, right? It doesn't animate. Now, if you have a transition like this, if that's not disabled, and then you go ahead and change it, and you change it back to 40.5, it animates to wherever you put it, right? So once the value changes, it'll animate it to whatever position you changed it to. And that's what that transition does. That's literally all it does. It just basically is ready for the value to change, and when the value changes, it'll animate it from point A to point B, or if you're changing the radius, it'll animate that. Whatever property it is, it could be the width, it could be the height, it could be literally anything, but you specify it within these transitions. And then the same thing with the left. If you change the left to like 800 pixels, you know, whatever, it'll just go ahead and animate that way, right? So that is the correct way to write it. You write it like this. So that works. So now we know that our transition effect works. Now, I'm going to leave it linear, but I do want to show you guys what this means. So there's a couple of websites. Let's see, CSS Linear Transition. What's it called again? Timing function. So there's a couple of different websites. Let me see if I could find any. They give you like a nice little tool to see. So this is just telling you what the different transitions are, right? So there's some default ones, which is ease in and ease out, and I'll show you what that means. So ease in means that it starts slow and then it ends fast. So like if I change this to ease in, so these are like the default ones, right? Which is typically what you'll use depending on what you're trying to do. So if I'm easing this in, if I change the top to 0, you'll see that it starts low and then it speeds up as it goes, right? So that's what ease in does. And then ease out is the opposite. Ease out is it'll start slow and it'll speed up as it goes. And we'll go ahead and take a look at how that looks. We'll do 0 on left, so over here. And you can see it starts fast and then it slows down, right? And then ease in out is like it starts low, speeds up, and then it slows down as it's ending, which is the ease in out. Now, usually like when you're animating something coming into the screen or off of the screen or whatever, like you want to use ease in for when it's coming, ease out for when it's coming in, and ease in for when it's going out. Like that's usually like industry wise how it goes. But you can do a lot more with these animations. I will show you. So ease in out. Let me go ahead and change this again to 700 pixels, and you see it there. And now once I make it 0, you can see it starts low and then it ends low. So that's what these timing animations do. Now, if you don't like the default ones, you want to exaggerate it, right? You can use this cubic Bezier. You can use a Bezier curve, which is. I'll show you how it looks visually, because like just looking at these values, this looks complicated, right? It is complicated, but there are some websites you can use to just kind of like mess around with it. So like you could literally take these little things and kind of draw out the curve that you want, and you see these numbers come up. So what this means, it's like a linear animation would look like a straight line, kind of like you see that gray line. So that's what a linear animation looks. It means that it basically goes by the same speed from start to finish. And so the curve that you're adjusting here is the speed. So if you have something that looks, so ease in looks like this right here, as you can see on this curve here. I thought that it would actually go ahead and change this, right? But I'll just manually do it. So an ease in kind of looks a little bit like this, right? So it starts low and it speeds up as it goes. And ease out is the opposite. It looks more the other way, like that, right? So it starts fast and then it slows down. You get the point. So you can do all kinds of things with animations, and if you have like something that literally curves like this, then you're creating like a bouncy animation, and we'll use this as an example. And I think that's really all I'll show you, because from here on I believe it's self-explanatory. But if you use a cubic Bezier here like this, and let me go ahead back to my example and show you what that looks like. Top 800 pixels. And then let's change it down to 0, right? So once you change the value suddenly, you'll notice that whole bouncing, right? Because I'm messing around with the timing. And that's essentially what you've done with this animation. You made it bounce. So instead of like trying to remember values, like you can use websites like this to just kind of draw out exactly what you want your animation to do, and then just plug it in, and you're done. Anyway, moving on. Like I said, we're going to keep our animation linear, which is the default, so we don't have to actually specify this property here at all. That's how we're going to do this. So let's go ahead and move on. Okay, so refreshing, everything kind of starts here. So now we're going to make it so now this is when JavaScript comes in. We're going to make it so when we click on the blue box, it goes to the blue box. When you click on the red box, it goes to the red box. So the first thing I'll ask, and I'm hoping somebody knows the answer, does anybody remember how can I actually target an element on JavaScript? So if I want to, like, how do I target my ball in JavaScript? I'll give you guys like, I don't know, 30 seconds.
Well, I remember you being able to do it on this tool,
But you talking
on your
about
Windows tool.
Use a query selector, right?
correct? That's correct. So it's document.query selector. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna do everything that we're gonna work on the console here. Okay. So the first thing is we want to assign a variable for the ball. So I'm going to say, so okay, so here's also, take a step back. So going into modern JavaScript, let me explain what this means real quick. So we're going to no longer use var ever, and let me explain why. When you create a variable in JavaScript using var, which is like how I've been showing you guys how to do it, it's also the classic way of doing variables, which you can still do. It's not very friendly with like the garbage collector, and I'll explain what that means. So say you're doing a loop, right? You guys might remember this, maybe not. I did var I equals 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus. Okay, so what happens, so when the way that JavaScript operates and the way that it reads your instructions, when you're in a loop, if you assign a variable inside of this loop using var, so if I do like var test equals high, right? And I'm going to console log, I'm going to go ahead and console log the variable and which number we're in. So we are in I and the variable is test, and I go ahead and run that. You're going to see the value of my variable, right? It got reassigned as test for every single iteration from 0 to 9. But here's the thing. If I type test, my variable still exists, right? So JavaScript, even though I only assign my variable inside of my for loop, because I used var, I declared it as a global variable. So throughout the life cycle of this page until it's refreshed again, that test is going to exist, right? Even though there's like really nothing using it anymore. So that's one reason why you don't want to use var. When you're using const, which I'll go ahead and show you right now. So if it's const, it's the same thing. It just replaces the word var. I'm going to do test2 equals hello, right? And here I'll do test and test2. So now when you run this, it'll basically look the same. The only difference is test is still there, but test2 is no longer there because we're not using it anymore. So there's no need to store that variable. And then there's const and there's let. So you can declare a variable like this. So const variable name equals whatever your variable value is, or you have let variable name, I'm going to put a 2 there, equals whatever your variable value is as well. Okay, so now we have const and let. So now we have variable name like that, and you have variable name 2, which is that. Now what's the difference? The difference is if I want to change the value of variable name that I declared using const, and you can kind of think of the word constant, right? That's what const kind of stands for. If I want to change that to something else, like say I'm going to do variable name equals something else now. I'm going to say brass. I want to change the value of that to brass. I can't do it because you can't change the value of a constant variable. Another basic thing about constant variables is because you can't change it, it's going to be the same type no matter what, right? So it's a string, right? We assign this as a whatever your variable is. That's a string, not a number, not an object, not an array. It's a string. So when JavaScript is reading a const, once you assign this const, it knows that no matter what, every time it's handling this variable, it knows that it's a string because we declared it as a string, or it's whatever you declared it as. So it doesn't have to figure it out. Where if you do var variable name, just do test, right? If you do this, you can do this, right? And it's a string. Now you can go and make it an object and it still works. Now it's an object. Or you can go ahead and make it an array. Now it's an array. You can make it whatever you want. You can make it a number. Now it's a number. And you can just change it around. That's cool, you know, that it's flexible like that. But on the same note, if you think about programming wise, if there's no reason to do that, like if you don't actually have a reason to change the type of variable, then your code is going to be a lot faster if you just make it a const instead. So that way JavaScript just knows how to handle it immediately. It doesn't have to take some time to figure out what that type of variable is before it can do whatever you're trying to do with it. Now granted, this happens really quick, but if you have like a really large application with a lot of iterations and a lot going on, you want to code things to be as efficient as possible so that your code performs really nice and fast. So that's the major reason why we don't use var anymore, because there's literally never going to be a reason to. You're going to use either let or const. Now notice that when we try to change the variable name on let, we got this error, assignment to constant variable, can't do it. But if we do variable name 2 equals something else, like an object, it behaves very much like a normal var, right? The only difference between a let and a var is that a let is not going to be declared on the on your global scope. So like if I go now in the same example here and I see let test3 equals how are you, and I do the same thing here, right? So test3, so the console log, so for all three we have all that. Now test is still there, it got overridden, it's a global variable, it's still in our scope. The test2, which is what we declare with scope, is gone, it's not being used anymore, it doesn't exist. And then test3, which is the one we create with let, also doesn't exist. So unless you are intentionally creating a application-wide global variable that you want to use, like you want it to like have that value everywhere, that's the only scenario where you would use var. But once we get into classes down the road, which probably the next lesson, you'll realize that there's actually not going to be a real scenario. Like if you're using var, you're doing something wrong more often than not. Like I can't think of a good reason to use var at this point, right, in JavaScript. So you're always going to be using let or const. And then one last thing that I want to clarify about const before we move on. You can change the value of const. I mean, necessarily you can't. So like say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make an object, right? So const obj equals an empty object. Now you can't make object equal anything else, right? You can't change the value of it, but it has a reference to an object, you can change the object. Like you can say like, you know, object property 1 equals something, you know. So that object has changed, although the variable it's still the same and it's the reference to the same object. But JavaScript knows that that's always going to be an object no matter what, because you declared it using const. So anyway, so that's the big difference. And when I show you guys examples, you won't see me using var anymore. So I just want to kind of clarify that before I move on. Does anybody have any questions so far about any of this stuff that we just went over, or about any of the things that I went over before this? 3, 2, 1. Okay, no questions. Good. So let's move on. Okay, so moving on to animating this ball. So the first thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna refresh this just so that all that stuff that I just did is gone. It's all gone now. Whoops, it's all gone. Doesn't exist anymore. Cool. So the first thing we do is we're going to create a variable for ball, and that scope says query document.query selector is how you. It's one of the. There's more ways to do it. You can do get element by ID. The more modern way to do it is document.query selector, and then you just do, just like you do it in CSS, hashtag the name of the ID. The name of the ID of my ball is ball, right? So once I do this, now I have my ball right there. That's my element, and now I can do whatever I want. If I want to change the style, I could go style.top. So that's like the top value of it. I can say style.top equals 800 pixels, like we were doing manually before. So when you do that, that did do shit. So what did I do wrong? Let's see. Ball style top. Let's see what I did here. So ball.style. We got CSS style declaration. It might have a different minimum. Let's get to the T's. Top. Okay, I might have. Okay, what did I do? Hold on a second. Let's clear this out. I did ball.style.top equals 800 pixels. I think I just wrote it wrong. Yeah, there you go. I put a semicolon in there. Don't do that. That's my bad. So that's how you would change the value of your thing using JavaScript, or you could just go ahead and say 0, right? So that's how we would use JavaScript to do that. So now we want to know where in the blue box do we want to put it, and we want to put it when we click on the blue box, right? So we already have a value for ball, so that's cool. So let's go ahead and create a I'm gonna put the rectangle, I'm sorry, the two rectangles in an object. I'm gonna make an object called boxes. Okay, so this is an object, right? And now I'm going to make it so the object is gonna have two properties, red and blue. So I'm gonna say boxes.red equals document.query selector, and then we can target the red rectangle with class box, just like that. And then boxes.blue is going to be the same thing, but it's going to be blue instead of red. So now we have blue. So anytime that you're like going to create a variable that you're going to be having like the same kind of thing, you want to use like an object or an array to contain those things so that you don't have to like reference them different. And this is it's going to make more sense as we go along. So now if I look at my boxes, I have two boxes. One of them is the red box, the other one is the blue box, right? So it makes it a little easier for you to code what you want to do. Now I don't necessarily need to change anything on these boxes. I just need the boxes for reference so that I know like how to get certain things. So how do I find out like what the top and what the top value and what the left value is for the blue box, because that's what I want to put the ball in when I click on blue, right? So let's kind of backtrack. So the first thing I want to do is make something happen when I click on blue, right? So I'm going to make a function called go to blue. So I'm going to say boxes dot go oh, let me think about this. Okay, bear with me here. So first thing I'm going to do is figure out how do I get the value for blue, for like where the blue box is. So I can do boxes.blue dot, and then I'm trying to remember, is it offset? Yeah, so offset left and offset top will give you those positions, right? So offset left, this is where the blue box, the left side of the blue box is, and offset top is where the top of the blue box is. So I want to create a function that's going to make it so when you click on blue, it will go and move the ball there, right? So I'm going to say boxes.blue dot add event listener. I don't know if you guys remember this from a previous lesson. Now the listener is going to be click, and I'm going to give it a function. Okay, so arrow function syntax in there. So now I'm creating a function for what happens in blue. Now just to kind of like, because I could only like really assign this event listener once, I'm gonna make a function called go to blue. Okay, and right now this function is just gonna be a test. I'm just gonna say console log test. Just want to make sure that this is gonna happen when I click on blue. So now I'm gonna go ahead and say add event listener, and then I'm not gonna use an arrow function. I'm just gonna say go to blue. So now we're adding an event listener to the blue box, which when you click on it, we run this function called go to blue, right? So now when I click on the box, there's my test console log, right? Because I created, so just to kind of reiterate what I did, I created a function called go to blue. That function just does a console log test. And then when I click on blue, I just assign the event listener on the boxes blue. Remember, I assigned boxes blue equals query selector. So now boxes blue is my blue box. And when I click on it, I run the function called go to blue. So if I keep clicking on it, it's just gonna keep telling me test over and over again because that's all I've done. So I can change the function to something else, like, you know, all that. And if I click on it now, it's okay. I have to redeclare. That's what I thought. So let's go ahead and work out the function here first, right? So go to blue, and then we can go ahead and assign that function to, and actually go ahead and put that code in NetBeans, so we don't have to like continue to like retry this from the console, right? So we're gonna make so this function go to blue is going to do all the things that we want to do. So the first thing we want to do, so the first step that I want to do, I already have that variable called ball, right? It's I did const ball, so it's available from here. So I'm gonna say ball dot style dot top equals, and then I want to send it over to, for now, like there's going to be some adjustments, but for now I'm just going to make it go to offset left and offset top from the blue box when you click on go to blue. So here's yet another new thing to kind of wrap you guys your heads around. We talked about string concatenation before, where you can, so one way of doing it would be like, which is the way you guys should be familiar with, is I can say boxes.blue, and then I can say offset left plus pixels. That's one way of doing it, right? It'll concatenate the value and the px, so this will be 934 pixels. And then you want to do the same thing to the left. You want to say ball.style.left is boxes.blue offset. This is supposed to be top, not left. Okay, so that's top, that's left, and then you change the value like that. So now when you say go to blue, the ball is going to go to blue right there, but it's going to go to the top left of blue. So I don't know if you guys remember, but we did we made the top and the left kind of like that, right? So you have to add this value here, the top and the left. So just so I don't have to keep like remembering, I'm literally going to assign a variable called ball margin. I'm going to say 40.5 pixels. Whoops, 40.5. Forget the pixels. I'm retarded. Okay, 40.5 is what we're going to set the ball margin to. So now when we assign this function, I can say go to blue is going to be boxes.blue offset top plus ball margin plus pixels, right? Ball margin plus pixels, just like that. So let's see if that worked. go to blue, and there it is. It like slowly animated to the middle. Good. And now let's do go to red, which is going to be roughly the same thing, but the only difference is this is going to be red, this is going to be red, and this is going to be red. Everything else stays the same. So now if I say go to red, boom, it animates to red. So now we have two functions, go to red, go to blue, and if we run it, the ball does the animation that we want it to do. So go to red, go to blue, bam. So we can kind of send it back and forth as we please just by running those two functions. So that's essentially what we want to do, but now we want to assign the click values, right, for the boxes. So let's go ahead and start putting all this code that we worked on here so we don't have to like write it again. So again, separate JavaScript file for this. So if you're doing this and delivering it as homework, make sure that the JavaScript file has its own file. You should know how to do that. So script type equals text JavaScript, and this closes the script. And then in here, we did a couple of things. We did const ball, and you can go up and copy and paste everything that you did, right? So, well, you're not gonna get all of it, but I remember it's very straightforward. We did const ball, document.query selector ball, like that, and then we did const boxes, was it? Or was it box?
Boxes.
Boxes. Okay, we did const boxes as an object. Now we did an empty object and then we added to it. You don't have to declare it as an empty object. You can just declare it as an object with properties. So you can say blue. Well, the red is first, so I'll do red first. So you can say red document dot query selector dot red, and then blue document dot query selector blue. So now I'm going to show you guys how you can use a little bit of iteration and JavaScript magic to simplify what we just did with these functions, so we don't, because the only thing that changes is red and blue, right? Everything else is the same. You shouldn't actually have to do a go to blue and go to red. You can actually just have a global function for it. I think you guys kind of know where this is going, but we'll get there, right? So all I've done so far in this JavaScript is just create the elements, right? So I'm going to refresh here and just make sure that all of this is the way we expect it to be. So when we come here and we look at ball it does not exist. So what's going on? Let's see. Did I not refresh? Refresh. It should exist now because we created a variable for it. So ball is null. Interesting. Boxes is there. Did I write that right? Document.query selector ball equals document. Hold on. Let's figure out what's going on with the ball. Document.query selector. This is all null. Oh, okay. I know what's going on. That is my bad. So, because I have the script on the header, this is happening before this is rendered, and therefore they don't actually exist at this point of the page, right? So you want to move your script tag to be below your divs, because this is when you're actually running the script to assign your targets. So now, sorry about that. So now when you refresh and you type ball, there is your div ball, and when you type boxes, there's your red and blue boxes. So now I'm just going to make a general function here, and I'm going to call it function, and I'm going to say move ball, but then I'm going to do a parameter in here, and I'm going to call it like color. And we'll do it here first, just so you could like test it out before we actually write it for real in the thing, right? So function is going to call move ball, and then color is going to be a parameter. And you guys remember from the last lesson, right? So whatever we pass to that function when we call it is going to be the parameter that gets passed in here. So now we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing that we did before, which was all of this, right? So let me copy this, and this is where ditto comes handy. Like, you know, this is what I had before, and this is what I want to paste in here. But now the only thing that's going to be is whatever color it is, we're going to say ball style. All of this stays the same. The only thing that was changing before was the color of the boxes, right? So now I can refer to the boxes from the dynamic color using that color variable. So I can say boxes color dot offset top offset left plus ball margin. Now one thing that I forgot to do here is create our ball margin variable. Ball margin equals, I think it was 40.5 like that. But now, and this is the second thing that I was going to show you guys how to do. When you're concatenating a variable in a string, this is going to look more confusing right now, but trust me, down the road, it's going to make sense why this is better to use, especially when you're trying to do really complicated things. Remember once I said that we are going to use either single quotes or we're going to use the ticks, the apostrophes that are like under your escape button. So in modern JavaScript, you can use this apostrophe to concatenate strings and variables by wrapping every variable or function or whatever in a $ open squiggly bracket like that. So I'm gonna say, so when I assign it like this, boxes, I'm gonna put it in parentheses here. So boxes color offset top plus ball margin in parentheses, and then you can do px, right? So everything that's inside of these of the $ squiggly bracket, it has to be inside of the ticks, is going to be converted to like a variable. I know that for this example it looks more confusing, but typically it will not, right? For this example it does look more confusing than just doing the way we did it originally. But I would recommend just getting used to doing this anytime you're concatenating a string and a variable. And I'll show you a clearer example so it's not so confusing in a second here. But that's what we want to do. So again, move ball is going to take that parameter, and then it's just going to run this function for the ball, and it's going to send the ball to whatever the box is with the margin and the padding, regardless of what color it is, because the color is something we're going to pass on to it, right? So let's go ahead and test that. So if I say move ball red, ball, oh, I forgot to do const ball margin. I did it over there, but I didn't run it over here. 4.5. Okay, so let's run that again. Move ball red, it's already there, so it's not going to do anything. If I say move ball blue, it'll go ahead and move to blue. So what's happening here, right? When I say move ball blue, it's going through the function color equals blue, so it's going to come here and get the blue box and offset top of the blue box and then offset left of the blue box and do that. And if you say move ball red, it'll go to red. So now we have this generic function that we can use. So I'll go ahead and move that there. We already have our ball margin, so everything's good. So then the last step now is finally assigning the click functions, the click functionality for these boxes. And we can iterate and say object.keys. I'll do it here first. Okay, I'm just gonna say, so object.keys boxes, so this gives us red and blue array, but we're gonna say .map, and we're gonna say color like that, arrow function. So again, what's going on over here, I'll console log it so you guys can kind of try to follow up. It's iterating through the boxes, it's iterating through red and blue. We're doing an iteration, so we don't have to do this more than once. And now we're going to do a document.query selector. And this is how we target the box. So the way you target the box is going to be, and here's where we're going to use that concatenation that I just talked about. We're going to use string dot and then open close color like that. So that is how you target the box. This is essentially the same thing as just typing .red or .blue, right? But it's iterating, so it'll change depending on what we're doing. And then we're going to say, so we're targeting the boxes, and now we're going to do .add event listener, .click. I hear something. Anybody have anything to say? No? Okay, cool. Add event listener, and then click, and then you're going to go ahead and do your arrow function, and you're going to call do, what is it again? Move ball color, like that. So that is how we will declare our add event listener in one line. And if just to kind of simplify, this is essentially what this will look like if you choose to indent it. Because it's such a short statement, I normally wouldn't indent this. But so we're iterating through red and blue. We are on each iteration creating it, targeting the rectangle with document query selector. The first iteration we're targeting red, and then adding a click event listener to that red box that will run my move ball function, sending the color as a parameter. And then we're doing the same thing on blue, right? So then bam, let's click there. Something's wrong. I wrote listener wrong. Listener. Let's try that again. So now when you click on blue, it goes to blue. When you click on red, it goes to red. So now I can take this little function here and paste it here, and voila, we're done. That's basically it. That's it in a nutshell.
Basically witchcraft.
Yeah, so now we've refreshed this one last time, and we have finished our code. Let me maximize this. Whoops, that's not the right thing. Let's maximize this and click on blue. Bam, animates to blue. Click on red. Bam, and when just on the hour we managed to finish our little example here. There's very little going on, right? So let's just very quickly recap without going over, like, just in a human way of kind of explain what's going on. We have two divs that represents the boxes. It's very straightforward. Where is my shit elements? Why is this here? This should be here. So we have a box blue and a box red, and then we have a ball that sits on top of everything. Both these boxes have listeners, a click listener, and when you click on them, all they really do is change the top and the left variable for the ball. And the reason why it animates is because the ball animation has this transition here, and once you override that with JavaScript by clicking on the ball, the ones on the class become redundant, right? Because we're actually giving it, like, when you assign it manually with JavaScript, it's giving it that style tag, so it'll override whatever you have in your CSS file to make it do what it's needing to do. So that's it. That's the example. Now, one final thing that because I think that might have been a little confusing in the end. So, like, say you have a variable called, I don't know, let me think. Here we go again. Fruit, red, right? Actually,
Goddamn fruit all the time.
fruit. Okay, let's not use fruit for scope. Let's say animal, dog, right? And you want to print out like what that animal is. You can go ahead and you can type using that other thing. You can say my animal is a, and then you can say dog in there. Dog is not the oh, it's animal. Oh god, my animal is a dog, right? The other way, now let's just say you want to do more with that, like just say my animal is a dog who likes to run, right? You can either write it like this, who likes to run, which is very simple, right? My animal is a dog who likes to run. Or you can do, using normal quotes, you can do my animal is a, and then you have to do space, and you got to remember to have that space there. And then you got to say plus animal, plus, and then another space, who likes to run. So this is a little more complicated when you're doing like high-level string concatenation than this version here. And the cool thing about this version here, which you can't do with this version here, is you can do any JavaScript in here. Like if you needed to like do an iteration here and do like, oh, okay, so object dot blah 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 blah. You can. Any JavaScript functionality will fit in here, right? So that's why this is the modern example using these ticks. So the rule of thumb would be, if you're writing a string that doesn't have like any concatenation, use single quotes. If you are writing a string that you are concatenating, do not do single quotes and pluses. Do the apostrophe, the tick below your escape button. And then when you're typing a variable, it goes $, open, close, curly bracket, and then your variable just goes in there. Does that make sense? That's what I did for these functions over. Let me go ahead and maximize this now. For the function over here. And I hope that that makes sense. Now, does anybody have any questions? Because this is basically it. We're done. And then obviously the last step here would just be to move this into its own CSS file, which I hope you guys remember how to do. And then you move the script into its own JavaScript file, and you just reference it underneath everything. Or you make it like only execute once the page is loaded, which is something else you can do and have it on the header instead. But either way is fine. I heard a Discord noise, so does anybody actually want to say something? No? Okay. So extra credit if you want to give yourself a challenge and you want to try to reproduce this. I'd say pick 2 more colors and put a box on the bottom left and on the bottom left and the top right as well, and do all 4 corners. You know, and the cool thing about this is that even if you resize, I think I already showed you that, because we're actually targeting the width dynamically, the boxes dynamically, you know, it'll always like go because it's going by reference, right? So you can look at you can literally pull this up on a phone and it'll work just fine because of how we coded it and how we designed it. But that's it. That kind of covers our practical example for today. I mean, this is a, go ahead.
No, nothing. Everyone's leaving.
Oh. So this covers our practical example for today. This is like a very simple way of tying those 3 things together, those 3 things that we've been going over. From here on out, I think that on the next lesson, we're going to go over JavaScript with nodes. So like pure JavaScript in the next lesson. We're going to talk about classes and dig a little bit more into modern JavaScript. And then like show you guys examples of how we like would go about writing a JavaScript server, or something that, you know, a script that does something for you, you know, how you would do like a Discord bot. Maybe we'll do a Discord bot as an example to see how can you do a Discord bot with JavaScript, and so on and so forth, because it's very easy to do once you understand the basics of JavaScript, which I believe now at this point you guys do. But that wraps it up, and since there are no questions, I guess we can go ahead and end it here. As far as the next lesson goes, we'll again shoot for Saturday at 5, and if something happens that we can't do that, we'll just push on to Thursday. But we'll shoot for Saturday 5 Eastern for now, and if that doesn't happen, then we'll see what happens. But that's it. Thank you guys very much for the time, and we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up over here. Have a good one, everybody.